Welcome back and thank you for staying with KTN Prime. Of course, we continue the conversation. My guest is still here with me, Kiplimo Kigen, Head of Policy and Research and Advocacy at KNCCI, and Odhiambo Ramogi, an economist and CEO at LM Capital. Now, Kigen, before we went for that break, I cut you short, so maybe we can pick it up before we continue with this conversation.
Yes, going back to the point on intentionality, government, it's one thing for something to be said and to be, being said in whether it's on a formal or in an informal setting. But the thing that actually matters is the implementation, is the action. And we're seeing a bit of mismatch on that front, and we would like to see, more action that actually matches the words.
Yeah.
If you look at, we've got an item called the quarterly business barometer, and in fact we changed it up a bit this year. So at the start of the year, we spoke to close to 2,000 businesses, members and non-members of the chamber, businesses working in all the sectors across the 47 counties, and businesses of all the sizes. And we asked them, what do you think 2025 is going to be like? And 60% of the businesses that we engaged mentioned that they are not expecting to hire more people in 2025. Now, this goes back to point to the issue of NSSF and the deductions, because the cost of payroll is going to increase for these businesses. And that's why you see those kind of sentiments being reflected. And when we asked them, what are your top challenges for 2025, they said high taxes, levies, and unfavorable government policy. That was number one. And that's why that issue of finance bill, we really want to pronounce ourselves on as the private sector. The other item that they mentioned is access to affordable capital. Now, you've seen government, really coming out strongly and saying we want to provide affordable access to capital to businesses. And the interest rate has come down. In fact, yesterday, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank did lower the base lending rate by about 50 basis points. But again, if you go back to the budget policy statement, you see that the government wants to borrow about 540 billion locally in the coming financial year. And that will be an increase of about 132 billion. So yes, the interest rate is coming down, but you still want to borrow more locally. So it will bring the crowding out of the private sector.
Yeah.
So then you're sending mixed signals.
The math is not mathing.
Absolutely.
All right, coming to you, Ramogi. I mean, you talked about the COTU Secretary General, Francis Atwoli, and he said NSSF is not a tax, but a structured mandatory savings schemes designed to help workers retire with dignity. In fact, he added that Kenya lags behind its ESC counterparts in social security contributions. Let's start with that.
In all honesty, my problem with Atwoli is not even NSSF. My problem with Atwoli is Atwoli. Atwoli needs to at least allow workers to chart their own way forward. I feel like, because the other day, FK is clearly saying that the workers of Kenya are overburdened by the tax policies. Atwoli is coming up to contradict the statement of the FK.
Let's not forget the fact that they equally said over 5,500 Kenyans have been fired. Yes, and this is just the number that is known.
Right, by the FKE.
Yes.
And Atwoli comes and says no one has been fired. So I'm wondering, is Atwoli for workers, or Atwoli is a government agent masquerading as a workers' leader? So that is a problem. Naturally, I am in agreement with the NSSF. It is supposed to help Kenyans. But let me comment and say this is the micro problem. The bigger problem, however, lies in, are we able to make the payslip of Kenyan workers much more manageable? And that question must be answered in the affirmative. Mbadi has started the conversation. However, we still doubt him. And perhaps to contribute to what Kiplimo said, there is what we call fiscal consolidation.
Yeah.
That the IMF still expects us to collect taxes and pay them. And so there is that fiscal consolidation that he must do. And for him to do fiscal consolidation means he must add more taxes, because, as he mentioned, in this year alone, we are expecting 900 billion. I mean, they are expecting to pay about 900 billion. Now, where is that going to come from? That is going to come from the pockets of Kenyans. And as I mentioned, payee is the #1 revenue earner for Treasury. And so they are giving mixed signals. On one hand, the reality is that they are still subservient to IMF. IMF wants more taxes, more revenue. On this other hand, they are saying that they are going to adjust the tax policy. So I think that needs to come out clearly. And finally, is the whole question of the president saying that you cannot change a country with ordinary plans.
Yeah.
There I agree with him. The question is, what is the economic plan that His Excellency the President has? What is the economic plan that this government has? To date, we don't know. Because when they came in, they had a manifesto. And that manifesto was very clear on agriculture and micro and small enterprises and housing. Now, in agriculture, they did fertilizer. And fertilizer is not the problem with agriculture primarily. The problem with agriculture goes beyond just inputs. It goes into storage. It goes into logistics. It goes into climate change. It goes into marketing what has been produced. And you cannot come and you say that your only plan in changing the agriculture of the country is just fertilizer. I think there is a failure. The second thing was micro and small enterprises. He was mentioning to me that at Ministry of Trade, they have had 5 ministers of trade since this government came in less than 3 years. 5. And what that means then is there is no continuity of policy. There is no clarity of leadership. We are not sure where the trade is going. And so micro and small enterprises was in cooperatives. I think now it has been moved to trade. It's all over. There is no clarity of plan, Mr. President. And so when you're telling us that you do not need regular plans, no, where I'm seated right now, the first thing is, please show me a plan, regular or irregular. Let's have a plan. In chess, they say, at least have a plan. Even if it's a bad one, just have a plan. These guys don't have a plan. That's a problem.
And does that mean doom for Kenyans? Because if we have a government that allegedly does not have a clear plan, where are we looking at in the next 2 years when we go back to the elections?
So allow me to look at it from 2 sides.
Okay.
So one, when it comes to the macroeconomics, the government has been able to deliver good results for that. And I mean, it's also contributed to, it's also a factor of the global, financial trends that are going on. But we've seen some positive items on inflation, the currency, as I mentioned earlier. Now, the job that remains, the even bigger job, is to push for the microeconomics. Now, the government needs to put a lot of focus now on that. Yes, we've been able to secure good results when it comes to macroeconomics. Now let's move to the bigger job. And even at that, I think we've gotten to the point where as a country, we need to bite the bullet and do the hard stuff that nobody wants to do.
Which is?
Now, what do I mean by that? The coming financial year, as the government will be looking to raise 343 billion extra in taxes, they are not going to get this from the formal side of businesses because pay has been pushed to the brink. Businesses in terms of taxation, businesses in the formal side, they can't take more taxes. Now, if we want to raise these 343 billion, we're not going to get them from the formal side of the economy. Really, we are not. It's not there at the moment from the private sector. Now, we've got to go back and do the hard stuff which nobody wants to do. It's go ahead and bring in the informal side of the economy into the formal side. Instead of deepening, taxes, broaden the tax base, not deepening it. By deepening it is where you see these items of continuously, going to, because the pay slip is an easier target.
Okay.
You go and raise whatever you want easily. And so, is taxation and levies on formalized businesses.
So by informal, you mean the jua kali and
Absolutely.
the likes? Okay.
That's where the hard stuff is, the question of formalization of the informal sector. And I mean, it is almost a jigsaw puzzle. It's the hard stuff, but it is a sustainable thing because continuing to flog this formal side of the economy, it's going to kill the horse.
Coming to you, I mean, at the end of the day, Kenyans want money in their pockets. If your inflation is going to reduce, but I still can't buy bread or unga that is coming down, it does not add up to a common mwananchi. At the end of the day, for Kenyans, they're asking, how do they get more money in their pockets? Yes.
Well, we've had a triple problem. High interest rates, which means then you cannot borrow. And if you cannot borrow, it means you cannot produce. And so that is one problem on the other hand. So the second problem is high taxes. So even the little you get is taken a lot of it. So that also means you do not have disposable income, you do not have savings, and so you cannot invest or produce. And the third problem is, in spite of this, there is the high debt policy, where the government comes into the market and mops and crowds out you and I. So this meant that the economy is dry. Macroeconomic indicators could be good, but the economy is dry of just money circulating and creating a multiplier effect. This is further compounded, of course, by the fact that most of our projects engage the Chinese contractors. So you get like money going outside, money that should be circulating here and creating a multiplier effect. And so all these factors have contributed to the fact that hakuna pesa kwa economy ina circulate and that. Now, we have started at least on the right footing in the monetary policy end by lowering the interest rates, as he mentioned, 50 basis points. That's beautiful. Obviously, in the short run, the problem he is citing of crowding out is a short-run problem because when the government goes to borrow and crowds out mwananchi, that would affect the. But in the longer run, with a lower interest rate and a lower cash reserve ratio. Cash reserve ratio is the ratio that CBK gives banks that this money must remain fixed. So they lowered it so that more money can be released from the banks.
Yeah.
That also means additional money circulating. So on monetary policy, I would say we are in the right track.
Okay.
Now, the problem remains on fiscal policy, where, number one, we get revenue, and number two, we spend the revenue we get. We are spending on paying taxes, and we are spending money to foreign contractors, which means our money is going to circulate in a different economy. I think we need to relook into that. And number two, so essentially, as regards making the Kenyan payslip a lot better, the fact still remains that we need a plan of how to get ourselves from here.
Yeah.
And I don't think the plan is merely just taxing Kenyans. I think the problem is production. How can we produce as a republic in a way that, one, sustains the local market, and two, we can export and get foreign exchange? That is the missing discussion in government corridors. Because if then we were thinking production, we produce less beef than we eat locally. We produce less maize than we eat. We produce less sugar than we eat. We produce less fruits than we eat. We produce less vegetables than we eat. In other words, only the local market only would really revitalize this economy if we focused our attention on production, even if it's just agricultural production before we go into manufacturing. But beyond that, also, we need to ask ourselves, what are the policies that we can put in place to ensure that we encourage production? I don't think we are having that conversation enough, and I think that is the conversation that we need to have.
Yeah, because my next question would be then, if we're looking at manufacturing, we're looking at, boosting production in different industries, and yet there's no ease of doing business.
Right.
How does that work out?
Well, the ease of doing business is twofold. Of course, there's the soft, and then there's the hard. The hard is naturally, they need more taxes.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that is about to change. But you see, there is the soft areas where you can encourage businesses to still conduct business. And this could be just providing storage space, for example, for agricultural production. This could be ensuring that there is market access. This could be ensuring that roads are availed to those who are in production. This could actually be ensuring that you have conversations with the people who are in production. And a government that has conversation with its members, and I commend Honorable Mbadi for the initiative he had to just go to Bonge la Mwananchi. But we need a government that talks to everyone, not just the big guys at CAPSA, even the small guys at Kenya Chamber. Come talk to them and hear them out and have a conversation. And so it's not just the hard, it's also the small things that matter. You will be surprised some of the things that are making people not to produce are very small and non-fiscal in nature. But if you actually sat down with people and listened to them, you can actually sort some of those issues out.
All right, Keegan, coming to you. I mean, the aim is to get inclusive tax policies. But what is inclusive tax policies? You know, for you two who are good with numbers, it's easy for you. But for all of us who are not so good with numbers, explain to us.
Inclusive tax policy and even the inclusivity of the tax regime and structure in Kenya is actually going to raise revenue for the government, but also bring a balance. If we have, as you mentioned, 3 million people who are in formal jobs, you know, that have a KRA PIN and they are paid a pay slip and the deductions happen. If we can increase that, and just increase that by bringing in the informal sector. And how do we bring in the informal sector? One, we bring in back confidence, even with how the interface that they have with the revenue authority, that it becomes a revenue service and not an authority where if you hear these are KRA people, you just rush away. So if we're able to unlock that and then also bring a balance in terms of taxes, because the reason why we have a huge illicit and these counterfeit markets, it's also there serving a purpose, serving a gap. Because if you look at the alcohol and alcoholic beverage market, 51% of the products are illicit and counterfeit. Now, it is there because it serves the purpose of providing affordable products. Because the taxes on alcohol and alcoholic beverage products are just insane. If you look at the 250 ml that they call quarter, like a vodka, it goes for about what? Maybe 280 RRP, depending on where you're buying it. But that is the formal one. But then you can go somewhere and you find it being sold for 130 shillings. Now the taxes for that is about, for that 250 ml, is about maybe 95 Kenya shillings, all inclusive. So there's no way that product can be sold. I mean, by the time it moves from distributor, even the margins of retailers, there's no way it can be sold for 130 shillings. So it means that there's a huge market. The government has been able, you know, the consequence of it is it has built a black market because people want to run away from the tax system. Businesses want to pay taxes. They don't have a problem paying taxes as long as it's fair and it's sustainable. I mean, those are indeed the principles of taxation. But looking at the year 2025, and this is an item that we continue to submit to government, that if they could just solve two things for private sector in 2025, one of them, hold off on any new taxes into the businesses and into the pay slip. Just do that. For that, you probably don't have to do anything, right? Just keep off.
Okay.
The second one is we have a big problem in the counties, the multiplicity and duplicity of taxes. You've got, you know, distribution, branding, what, and every county is charging whatever they feel like charging, and you have to pay it in every county that you work in. There's currently a process with the State Department of Investment Promotion, which we are part of. If we could be able to harmonize these duplicate and multiple taxes in the counties in 2025, just those two things in itself would solve half of the problems in private sector.
Okay. So by bringing in the informal sector, are we likely to get resistance from them as well?
A resistance to the tax policies?
Yeah, because he says we need to widen our tax, the tax gap.
There is already resistance.
There is resistance.
That is why they're not there.
Exactly. So then how do we solve that?
You know, widening tax base, what Kiplimo is not telling you, widening tax base simply means the small person paying their share of taxes.
Yes.
And the small person doesn't like the idea of paying their share of taxes. Let me tell you, I sat in a meeting where we were wondering how June 25th protests came about because it caught us, everyone, by surprise.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't catch us, it didn't surprise us that Kenyans are angry, but we didn't expect it was to that level. And a young person mentioned to me that the June 25th protests came from the private sector. The small guys, the small digital content creators online, the small guys who have those small shops online shops, the ones that sell you shoes at 2,000. Those are the ones who are offended by the digital tax. Those are the ones who actually now mobilized their friends because they have some level of influence online and protested against the Finance Bill 2024. And so the Finance Bill 2024 did not fall because of the civil society. No, that was the private sector. That was the informal sector that is saying that should be considered for tax. Now, the challenge of considering the same informal sector is, first of all, for someone to go informal, it means they have not been successful in getting the formal employment. So first, they are angry that you did not create enough jobs for them.
Yeah.
They have hustled somehow, somewhere, they are able to make a living, eke a living, and then you still want them to pay taxes, yet you already disappointed them in the first place. And so that whole environment is not for paying taxes. And so you need, for example, to create value, to show value, where is this tax going to? Why should I pay you tax after you have failed to create jobs for me, after you have failed me in one or two areas? I am still paying for my siblings who need to go to school. I am paying for my parents who need to go to the hospital. Why should I still pay you tax? And so that brings the whole question of what value is my tax doing? Can you demonstrate that there is something that my tax is doing before you come to me for more taxes? And so, yes, there will be little resistance from the informal sector, but I think if we can demonstrate value to the informal sector and manage the waste and the arrogance of government that precipitated June 25 of 2024, I think we will get there.
Okay, coming to the whole issue of the protest. I mean, right now, Kenyans do not trust the government. That is it. We've seen opulence. We have seen corruption on the rise. How do you convince these people who have already seen it? And even after the protest, we've not seen much change. How do we convince them to actually, trust this government, especially with their money? Actually.
That is actually one of the items that's sitting between the formalization of the informal sector, because Kenyans continue to hear these items of a scandal in a certain part of government or stalled projects where money was stolen, and as you're sitting there and you are and you're seeing that the new taxes are coming in, and you're like, for example, if I am in the informal sector, meaning informal sector, I am not formally registered, I pay my employees off the book.
Yeah.
If I see that, now when I formalize this business and the increase in deductions and whatnot, that I am going to pay more for me to pay my employees through the formal side, then I'm thinking maybe I'll be financing a Patek Philippe watch for a government officer by doing this, because the best use of taxpayers' shillings. So that question is very important, and it remains very key. If we're able to demonstrate consistently to Kenyans that this is where we are spending your money and we are spending it appropriately, Kenyans won't have a problem paying taxes.
Right.
In 30 seconds, I'll let you have the last word. Corruption is still a big issue, and that is why we're in the mess that we're in. Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to tackling corruption? Has it even been talked about?
The one man that I was hoping would have the capacity and I was hoping would have the willingness was President William Ruto to fight corruption because he is strong enough to fight corruption. Given his history of 2 years, I don't think that is going to happen. I lost faith. I was a believer who has lost faith. I don't think we are going to see any change moving forward. Because if he stole in the first, if there was government corruption in the first 2 years before the next general election, what makes you think now that we are heading towards election and they need liquidity, they will not get more resources from your taxes?
All right, so this is a conversation that will not end today, gentlemen. We'll continue calling you and getting your insights, but we do appreciate you making time for us here on KTN Prime. Odhiambo Ramogi, economist and CEO, Elim Capital, and Kiplimo Kigen, head of policy, research and advocacy at KNCCI, which is the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I'm Ashley Mazuri, and Jesse Rogers is with me here in studio just on the side, bidding you good night. And of course, our sign language interpreter was Marisha Witi. Have a good night.